Hey guys, and welcome back to Staying Sweet, the podcast. This is actually the final episode of 2023 and also the final episode of season 3. What a year we have had together. I have learnt so much just recording this podcast and being part of this growing community. It's honestly been incredible. The guests I've had on here, the solo episodes I've been able to sit and do. I just feel like I've learnt so much, and I honestly can't wait to see how this podcast evolves into 2024. But today's episode is not going to be dwelling too much on that. It's actually going to be focusing a lot on financial goals that I and we could be setting for 2024. I'd love to do more financial content in the new year. It's certainly something that I'm educating myself on at the moment, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And I feel like for the longest time, I felt like it was something that I maybe wasn't as knowledgeable in, and maybe that's why I steered away from that type of content. But I really hope in the new year that I can provide more of an insight and find those guests who want to talk about financial elements to their business and financial structures, growing your business. If you're self-employed, there are so many things you have to learn when you decide to go self-employed. I feel like that could be an entirely solo topic on its own. It's like the craziest thing, and I'm learning, we're all learning, and I love that this podcast has been an open space to have those conversations around things that maybe it's quite difficult to find information on. And I'm not saying finances are that, but sometimes finding someone to talk through things and break things down in a much more clear fashion is sometimes more difficult to find. TikTok is becoming one of my go-tos though for financial advice, and there's probably people watching right now thinking, dear God, does this girl ever stop talking about TikTok? But there are people out there who are financial advisors and, mortgage brokers. I guess that's what you call them, mortgage brokers. See, this is what I mean. I don't know enough yet. But there's so many different people that have expert levels of advice that don't take everything as like fact and face value, but take the information and learn. And I found TikTok to be one of the most fascinating places for educating myself a bit better on my finances. And today's episode really is just some things that I'm going to be working on over the year ahead that is going to help with my, my savings, help with my business growth, and just enable me to live a better life. And I really hope that some of these habits and tips and tricks will help you if you're somebody who is deciding today that they want to make the jump to a better financial future. So that's what today is all about. So I've broken the financial goals into phases, and phase 1 really is the financial snapshot. So that's looking at what is working for you and what are the numbers. Now we're not going to majorly number crunch here, but we're just going to look at what is in your bank account, what is in your business account, and look at your savings. If you don't have savings, okay, what is where, basically. Looking into your potential debts, your repayments, credit cards, things like that, all of those things, making a note of those, having that financial snapshot, just knowing what is in there. Because I think half the battle sometimes is the fear of opening your banking app and seeing the number. And actually sometimes that is the worst thing that you could possibly do, because when you are in a situation that isn't necessarily a positive situation, like avoiding it is the worst thing that you can do, because that starts the snowball effect. And, denial and avoidance is not going to help anything. So really just getting clear on your finances, being realistic about it. Okay, you're in debt, or okay, my savings are a bit depleted this year. I've bought XYZ, or I've splurged a bit too much this year or this month. Take that financial snapshot. Avoid judgment at this stage, because I really think the judgment is not going to help. It's not going to help. And I've had points in my financial journey where I've gone, oh my goodness, this is not looking good. And sometimes you just have to be like, right, okay, well, the only way is up now. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay positive and think about how I can turn this around and be more financially savvy, because learning from those things and those lessons and those moments where extra things have to happen, or you have extra expenses in one particular month just because that's the luck of the draw and that's the situation, having a strategy in place so you know that you can fall back on some money is the best way to go about things. So you're only going to know that if you can see what's in your bank account. So open that bank account, have a look, see what's around, see what is, coming up on your student finance balance, because that's another area of your financial portfolio that a lot of people dread, and they think, oh my gosh, the number is so big. For all of my university goers, that number is high. It is. It really is. And unless there is a way, like a crazy way of you repaying all that money, chances are you're going to be repaying it incrementally and slowly for the 30 years or so, 30 plus years that it will be that you'll have to repay it. And that's assuming that you're earning at a certain threshold. But understanding that there are so many people, probably 99% of people that are at university or went to university still have that debt lingering, and it's there. It's just a byproduct, unfortunately, of university, and it's really something that I've been thinking about. And I had this question asked in one of my recent videos and podcast episodes about dilemmas and career dilemmas, and one of them is about whether I regret university. And I don't necessarily regret university for the academic aspect, but the financial pressure and the financial decisions that you have to make at such a young age that will impact your future potentially is scary. And I wish there was more conversation about, oh, well, we'll just take out a loan and we'll just be on student finance. Like, those are big decisions to make, and it's why I wish there was more education and an understanding about where that money was coming from. And I think a lot more people could benefit from that knowledge. And I'm sure that knowledge is out there. It's just the accessibility to it and the finding of it that I struggle with. And I think, people need to know about more. I think in this first phase 1, you also need to look and review your monthly essential and non-essential expenses. So where is your money going? Like, at the end of the month, look at where you're spending your money most. I feel like for me, most of the time it's travel and subsistence. So subsistence being like coffees or food in relation to my business, like going out and having to buy lunch for myself, or deciding to buy a Starbucks because I feel like if I don't, I'll have a mental breakdown. I don't know why a Starbucks always helps. I'm trying to be better at that. But, those coffees, those things, are they really eating into your non-essential expenses? Like, do you really need that coffee? Phase 2 is all focusing around setting 3 clear financial goals. So we're going to keep it simple. We're going to strip it down to 3. And I'm just saying 3 because I feel like those are things that you could balance out throughout the year. You could hit those targets throughout the year. Have those 3 clear financial goals. Like, for example, you would like to earn enough money and have enough money saved so that you have a startup fund. You want to open and launch your business. You've worked out that you want to launch a product and you're going to have to pay a manufacturer to make your product. So it's going to come to a certain number. You're going to do the math. You're going to math the math. And you're going to realize that one of your clear financial goals is having that money ready to go so that when your product is developed, you can say to the manufacturer, let's go, let's make the product. That's just an example. Then I want you to think about having 3 clear budget categories. So your essential category, your non-essential category, and your goals category. So prioritize those goals. I think like a goal example could be like an outstanding debt maybe, or something like you really want to build an emergency fund, or you want to build a sinking fund for a trip abroad next year or a trip this year, or maybe you are, a graduate and you are going to work for a bit and then you've decided you want to do a year abroad. Like, okay, well now you need to work out how you're going to save and put money aside for that budget. And having those pocketed financial categories will change the game for you. So that needs to be clear. Having those goals worked out, sussed out is really, really, really important. Next, I want you to look at 2024 as a whole, because we're at the beginning of the year at this point. Visualize the future ahead, the future year. Just focus on this year. What are you visualizing for yourself? Are there going to be any major purchases? Have you noticed that your equipment is dying? Have you noticed that you're 3 years into your phone contract and you're going to need to upgrade because you use your phone for social media? Those types of budgeted and forecasted expenses, work out where you can place them throughout the year so you're breaking it up. If you're thinking about planning a holiday, I personally take holiday as an essential. I think everybody deserves a break. Everybody deserves a holiday. And I think, in my humble opinion, that it's important. It's so important so that you don't burn out. Even if it's a staycation, having that time off is so essential. I think things to consider, like bigger plans, longer term things that are going to crop up that might impact you in your business or your career, things like weddings, or big changes like you're growing and starting a family, those types of things. If those are coming into your year, or you're potentially predicting that they will happen in the year, visualize it, plan for it, expect it. If you are somebody who has decided that you need to learn to drive because it's stunting your career opportunities because you're requiring the need to drive, or offices are out of the way from you, or you're coming to recording studios that are far from tube stations or train stations. Okay, you need to learn to drive. I can drive, by the way, but this is just like a really random example. But I need to pay for driving lessons. I need to pay for car insurance. I need to potentially buy a car or find a car that I can learn to drive in. All those things are going to be those chunkier financial goals. Now, what you're going to do with those goals is then give them a category. So we've said things like sinking funds. We've said emergency funds. We've said, technology funds. I don't really know what you'd call it, but stuff that's going to be assets to your business, paying for things like softwares. Softwares are expensive. I edit with Adobe and I honestly would recommend it to everyone I know. It still is a business expense and you need to factor it in to your monthly outgoings, or if you're buying the software outright, again, that could be quite financially denting. So having a strategy in place or finances in place for that, I think grouping those into those categories, so your investments, your debt payoff, your savings, etc. Then determining your needs and wants to get there. So I say needs and wants because there's a very veiled thin line, and unfortunately social media has us believing and thinking that we are all ballers 24/7, and there are ballers out there. There are people that are living their best life, but you do not know how they have got there financially. You don't know if they are actually sitting in a pile of debt. And I'm not saying debt is a bad thing, because over our lifetime, it's going to be unavoidable. There will be times where we are debted or indebted to somebody or something, and it's not a bad thing. I think debt teaches us to prioritize and be rational with our finances. And I really want you to determine your needs, not others. This is where you get super, super blinkered. And actually the people that do the best and create the best are people who aren't heavily influenced by things around them. because I think, unfortunately, there are so many distractions and temptations and pressures to be, the best of the best, to have the latest this or the latest phone or all the latest technology or the fastest car. Those are great. Celebrate them. If you're working towards paying for and buying those things, I'm all for it. I think it's fantastic. But if it's something that is not part of your financial plan for the year, ignore it. It's not a big deal. Focus on the things that are essential. Focus on the things that you really, really want for this year. Okay, I really want to get on the housing market. What can I sacrifice? I can sacrifice a few nights out a year so I can put some money aside. I can potentially sacrifice a couple of coffees. I'm not saying all, because your girl needs her Starbucks order. She needs her iced shaken oat espresso, brown sugar espresso, guys. It's the best thing ever. I will have to have that. Like, there are moments where, for me, having that coffee feels like life or death, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to make myself feel bad. But if there's things that I can be doing to prioritize and do better financially, I'm going to take those things. I'm going to do better. And having those financial goals in place and determining what it is you want to achieve, not anybody else, is going to make the focus so much easier. I think next you want to think about your SMART goals. And SMART goals, I laugh when I'm like, SMART goals, but they do work. And it is important that you're not just throwing things out there into the ether. Yes, it's good to be on this mindset of manifestation and whatever, but I truly believe you have to take action, and you have to take it carefully. You have to have SMART goals. You need them to be specific. Make sure you know what you want. You need them to be measurable. Can you measure how successful this goal is going to be? Is it doable? That's the next one. Achievable. Is it something that you can do based on the salary that you've got coming in, the money that you've got coming in, your current expenses, etc.? Is it realistic? Are we saying I'm going to have a Bugatti Veyron on my driveway by next month? Hell no, Alice. You wish. I'd probably pick a different car, to be honest, but just the one that came off the top of my head as like a fast, expensive car. I don't need a Bugatti Veyron, guys. I'd be quite happy with another car. I mean, I'd be happy with a Mini or a Land Rover or a Range Rover or whatever. I don't need a £2 million car. But some people will think, okay, sky's the limit. And it's great. And I told you before to have that like blue sky thinking, and yes, do it, but be realistic. Is it something that you're going to be able to financially afford in a month's time? I also think realistic comes under the umbrella of not only can you pay for something, but can you maintain it? Because there's a lot of things that you could be able to afford and pay for in one hit, but can you afford to look after it? For example, a car as an asset, can you afford to pay for its road tax, pay for its petrol, pay to have its repairs done and its MOT? Factor in those financial dents into your budget and your balance, and think about how realistic that is for you. And then the final part of the SMART goal, time bound. So is there a time crunch or a deadline? Are you needing to hit a certain financial goal by a certain time frame? I know a lot of people, sort of from my age demographic, people are buying houses and their mortgage offers, there's a deadline, there's deadlines within those things. So consider that with your goal setting. Be realistic, be smart, be measurable. Now, phase 3 is where you really need to see your routines take shape, and it's routines and tools that are going to benefit you. Things that are going to really impact how you do this long term and how you improve your financial status in the long term and for the future version of yourself. So I think routine is where you're going to see behavioral change, and you're going to see how your mindset shifts around finances. And I'd love to speak to a mindset or like a money mindset coach, because there is a lot to be said for the way that we're brought up, the way that we're educated about our finances, the way that we are taught to deal with money, how we choose to spend it, And unfortunately, sometimes we're not always the controllers and the people who are able to decide how we are educated on our financial status and our financial journeys. And the only way I can say this is to rewrite your story and rewrite how you view money and how you believe money to be, because there's lots of books that touch on it, like You're a Badass at Making Money. That's a really, really good book. And also The Secret. I know people say, oh, wow, like that's a really woo-woo book. And a lot of people have read it. Trust me, the money segments in The Secret and The Power, you will be surprised at how quickly you shift your mindset around money and finances and abundance. And that's where like the mindset shift comes into play. And when you start to do things correctly, or like in a better way and a more structured approach, you will see real behavior change in yourself, and you will be able to like really reap the reward and enjoy the benefits of financial growth. So an example of a routine and tool is to create a roadmap. So measure and show that progress and integrate that roadmap into your budget. Have like a strategy for the year. I want you to periodically evaluate and check on your progress. So schedule in a self-review. What months feel easier or harder to save? What months are you finding you're spending more money? I feel like personally around Christmas, obviously I'm spending a bit more money, but the summertime, everyone's doing something. Everyone's traveling. I want to travel. That's usually where I find it a bit trickier. And also my birthday is around the summertime in July. So I have to factor that in. And that's another thing that I've written down. Things like birthdays or events or potential costs that you know that will come up due to the time of year. I also want you to think about an emergency fund. And if you don't know what an emergency fund is, basically a pocket of money that is for strictly emergencies only. It's not your savings pot. It's a completely different place that you place regular streams of income so that you have something to fall back on. And I would say this is really important for somebody who wants to go self-employed. If you're thinking about quitting your job, or if you're thinking about quitting and you haven't got a backup plan, having 3 months worth of finances, expenses, etc. into a separate pot away from your savings is essential, because you need to be able to fund yourself for a minimum of 3 months, because worst case scenario, that's how long it might take you to get a job again or decide to go self-employed. So have that to fall back on. I want you to also choose the best budgeting tools and processes for you. So for me, I found, I don't know why it took me so long to find this, but setting up direct debits into different pots has helped me so much. Changing the names of my financial pots as well. So a savings pot for a car or a particular expense or a treat or just something that you're working towards. Utilize those automated apps like Plum, Monzo. I personally am using Plum at the moment. So far, so good. I've been putting money aside into a pot for something that I'm working towards at the moment, and I'm feeling really good about it. And it's nice to see that money slowly drip feeding in. And I really think separating all your different things into separate pots helps so much more. It stops you from seeing money in your bank account or seeing something in your business pot or business account as just like this whole dump of money and feeling like, oh, well, I've got so much money in there, I could spend it all. When actually, by the time you've broken it up into all the possible things that you might be saving for, you should probably stick to saving it. It's really motivational. It's so great. And I've been really enjoying it personally. I think you need to ultimately find what works for you and know that consistency is the best way to see change. When you first make those pots, or when you first get yourself out of debt or hit that 0 mark or put that first £100 into a new pot, it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, I've got a long way to go here. But it's only going to go up if you allow it and you do the work now. I wish I'd told younger Alice, be a bit more financially savvy and put more things into pots. I think I would have saved much quicker if I'd done pots. And finally, just a couple of things to give you some food for thought for those financial goals for the next year. I would say start reading more financial and personal finance books. There's lots out there. I'll try and link and list some below. You don't necessarily have to buy them. I do have Audible. To save money, I've cancelled my Audible subscription, unfortunately. And this is actually due to Spotify launching their own audiobooks onto the platform. I'm already paying for Spotify Premium, and the books that I was initially reading and wanted to read are now on there for free, technically, in my mind, girl math. I've cut that expense, that £8 a month. I'm not using Audible, and now the money that I'm spending on Spotify Premium, I'm also enjoying the audio versions of those audiobooks on Spotify. So think savvily, think how you can cut those little extra expenses down, and definitely get some more reading under your belt, because there's so much to learn and there's great resources out there. And finally, in 2024, we're ultimately just working at being our best selves and being more financially savvy, and it's all part of the process. We're learning, I'm learning, and I just really wanted to end this year with just a little nod to financial goal setting, because it's something that I've been learning myself. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in and listening and watching. Make sure to give a rate and review.